Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IS current affair analysis for 27th August 2020, and these are the couple of issues that we'll be talking about today. So this article is taken from the Hindu and it is titled Making Agricultural Markets Reform Successful. So recently, as a part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, the government has come up with certain ordinances which repealed the APMCs Act and said that the act has to be amended to adopt e-national agricultural market, which creates a unified license system for farmers to sell their agricultural produce. Now, before this e-NAM was a concept, the usual norm was states passed Agricultural Produce Market Committees Act, and according to that act, a farmer from a particular geography was forced to sell his produce only in the mandis that he was registered in. As a result, price discovery became a huge issue and middlemen used to take away most of the money. In order to ensure the dream of doubling farmers' income by 2022, the government has introduced this e-NAM as a concept and it has been trying to mainstream this. However, the biggest issue here is lack of policy stability. So we have had a scenario where the government has retracted from its commitments on various issues regarding agriculture. For example, if we take the case of PM Fasal Bima Yojana, the entire structure of the Fasal Bima Yojana scheme has been changed right now, which places the onus of insurance on the states rather than the center itself. So in the context of falling revenues for the states, this has become an additional burden, and certain states like West Bengal, Telangana have actually dropped out from taking these schemes. Similarly, when we're talking about ambitious projects like PM Asha, the main objective of this program, as given in this article, was to ensure that at least 50% more than the cost of cultivation is given to the farmers. However, despite the clear intention of the government and objective of the government, the program was confined to just pulses and oil seeds. So why is this a problem? You have to understand that e-NAM is actually driven by market forces. This coupled with contract farming. So what is this contract farming? Say for example, a corporate company wants to make tomato sauce. So for that, it gets into a contract with the tomato farmers of a region, saying that if you produce a particular quality of tomatoes, we will procure all that and we will give back certain amount as a compensation for what you have produced. So this ensures a better price discovery and also lays down the platform for the vision of doubling farmers' income for 2022. Despite this, there have been flip-flops between the priorities of the government. At first, it has introduced PM Asha and said that we will be using this as a tool for doubling farmers' income. At the same time, you are also encouraging e-NAM. So just when the farmers were happy that they were getting more and more amount of money into their bank accounts, suddenly this emphasis on e-NAM and contract farming has created an environment of uncertainty, especially for the farmer produce organizations, which majorly consists of small and marginal farmers. So another issue that we have to address in this case is the issue of federalism. We have to understand that agriculture is a state subject. Now when we are creating model laws, we have to understand the adoption is dependent on the local conditions. So those local conditions were not taken into model laws according to the opinion of this writer. However, there is definitely a possibility to implement these model laws provided the issues are ironed out. The most important issue that the government did not address in the shorter term is market failure. What if e-NAM has actually been implemented right away, and what if market fails to deliver? Because if you take a look at the futures market and commodity market, there are only traders here. So with the usage of enam, you are trying to eliminate these traders, and you are actually empowering the traders to completely create a sort of a lobby without empowering farmers, without appropriate education for the short term. This will again lead to exploitation and market crash for prices. It doesn't mean that, say for example, today we have the rate of any commodity, say for example, like say kg tomato is somewhere around 50 to 60 rupees. Does it mean that the farmer is actually getting this money? No. So farmer hardly gets 1/10 of this price. So how do you increase this percentage to at least 50 to 60%? It is by empowering the farmers with the right kind of financial awareness and education system. Unless and until that is created, enam will have certain limitations, and again the traders will be getting all the benefits. If not the traders, the big farmers who have financial wherewithal and time to spend on learning about these financial products will be benefited. So does it mean that we have to completely stop using this market intervention and just rely on MSP? That is definitely not the intention. So every program requires a transition period and policy stability. So when you have to ensure that a program is successful, these two are the essential elements. You give time for transition and ensure that the policy stability creates an ecosystem where farmers are empowered. These two issues should be addressed as soon as possible to make the reforms actually successful. And for this, states should be made partner. Otherwise, it is very difficult considering the fact that agriculture is a state subject. So that is the gist of this article. This article is taken from the Hindu and it is titled The Uncharted Territory of Outer Space. So in this particular article, we'll be talking about the evolution of the outer space as a sector, how it evolved from being a global common which has been a symbol of Cold War to what it is right now. There is a lot of potential in the present scenario for commercial exploitation of outer space without endangering the avenue there and without causing any sort of trouble in the outer space. So for this, there is a definite need for creation of a legislative framework at both global level as well as national level, and these legislations should make sure that the idea which has always been universally accepted, that outer space is a global common or it belongs to everyone. So we have to ensure that our legislations address this aspect of democratization of outer space. Now before getting into the details of this article, what exactly is this outer space? So if we take a distance of 100 kilometers from the mean sea level of our earth, there is a layer called Kármán layer. So on Kármán layer and everything beyond that, we technically define this as outer space. So where is this defined actually, this Kármán layer? In the Outer Space Treaty. So in 1967 and every treaty after that, we have used this concept of Kármán layer as the basis for defining what is the definition of outer space. So in this context, we have to take a look at the evolution of outer space. So in 1950s, 60s and 70s, when we were talking about this era, when we're talking about the global politics, the major trend has been Cold War. So whether it is Russia which launched this Sputnik, or whether it is NASA's missions, or whether it is Aryabhatta's mission from India, all these are because they were pushing the agenda of Cold War. But in the case of India, that is in the case of Aryabhatta and afterwards the recent successes as we have seen in Mars Orbiter mission or Chandrayaan, all this were symbolism of national pride, because we have seen a scenario where our Prime Minister commented that the objective of this mission has been attained with the budget of a Salman Khan movie. So you can understand that we have stood as a role model, and that was a cause for a national pride. So in this context, the recent reforms that were announced as a part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat package. So in this package, the major reforms was the creation of an agency called InSpace for privatization of outer space and encouraging private entrepreneurs. Now, why is this a necessity at this point of time? In the future, the world is moving towards artificial intelligence, and World Economic Forum has been speaking about something called the fourth industrial revolution, which is driven by high speed data. Now this is possible with large number of satellites only, so we need 5G data. This 5G data and everything going forward would require huge number of satellites to be placed in outer space. Now with the limited capacities that the government has, it is very difficult without leveraging the skill and expertise of the private sector in space. So if we have to take a cue from international examples, we have had a scenario where SpaceX has reduced the cost of launching a satellite by almost 10 times. In the next few years, it is estimated that, in this article the writer says that it is estimated that if the present cost of launching a person after SpaceX came, it was reduced 10 times. Now with further increase in privatization of this sector, it would even be reduced to 10% of what it is right now after SpaceX came. So that would make commercial exploitation of outer space very cheaper, and that is the reason why we have to encourage our private entrepreneurs in space as well. So in this context, we have to understand that certain treaties like the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 has certain challenges which needs to be addressed. So what are these challenges? So the first one amongst them is the fact that there is no clear-cut definition as to what is to be done with the space debris. Now what is the space debris after certain rockets and satellites finish their timeline or finish their life period? Sometimes there is a possibility that they get stuck in that orbitals and they don't actually come back to the earth, and they keep on revolving, which cause a huge threat to the other satellites which will be launched in the future. So if suppose any of this particle hits the satellite, that would cause a irreversible damage. So such kind of space debris hitting the International Space Station has been a constant threat for International Space Station, and India is aspiring to have some ambitious missions like launching a indigenous solar observation satellite or the manned space missions in the future. All this will have to address the challenges which are not addressed by this Outer Space Treaty, and India has a responsibility to ensure that these issues are brought out at a global level as well. So going forward, when there is a huge opportunity exhibited by companies like SpaceX, India cannot afford to remain back in the race, because take for example certain initiatives like companies like SpaceX which are trying everything that they can through projects like Starlink. This is a project which was envisaged to provide global level access to internet everywhere. So when US companies have a head start, or any global companies have a head start, there is a possibility that this sector will be monopolized. Now India cannot afford to monopolize these sectors. So the creation of InSpace is a good sign, and we have to create a legislative framework which addresses the challenges posed by this outdated laws of yesterera, which were created in a Cold War era environment. Now in this context, we have had various discussions and debates regarding the outer space treaty, and India should also create a mechanism where there is grievance redressal. There is no accountability mechanism right now in international laws with respect to space debris that is actually implemented in the spirit as laid down in those laws. So India should play the role of Vishwaguru, that is to stand as an example for international level issues like this one. So we are talking about a issue that is going to be a mainstream issue in the near future, and we're talking about global commons. So sustainable development will also include the safe usage of outer space in the near future. That will also become an international agenda, considering its close link to global economy. So that is the gist of this article.